Hello everyone, sorry about that. Hi, once again, we're back to the studio where we'll meet our special guest today. Not only he's a professor, he is also Delta's honor program coordinator, a writer, and producer of Movie House, which is a podcast about the film industry that airs quickly at Delta College Public Radio. I'm your host David Doe, and join me today to see who this special guest is and hear what he has to say. Well, first of all, thank you, Professor. Thank you so much for taking your time to being here on this episode of Professor Stars. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for asking me.
All right. Well, having said that, everyone's probably eager to know who you are. So, do you want to introduce a little bit by yourself, sir?
Sure. My name is Mark Brown. I am originally from Idaho. I was born and raised there. I started in college just like everybody here at Delta at a 2-year school. I got an associate's degree in humanities from a little school called Ricks College. I got a bachelor's in English from Idaho State. I got an MFA in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry from Boise State. And then when it was time to get my PhD, I came out to Detroit where I attended Wayne State, and I ended up earning my PhD in film studies a few years ago. I've been here at Delta for 10 years now, where I teach primarily composition, but I've also taught some creative writing, and for the most part, I teach a lot of film courses in the EMB discipline. So I'll teach the art of the American motion picture, studies in genre, and intro to film, and it's a blast. It's really, really fun. The film classes are among my favorite to teach. But in addition to teaching, as you mentioned, I also direct the honors program here at Delta. I've been doing that for the last 5 years. Next year is going to be my last year, so we're in the process of finding a replacement for the next person who will direct the program into the future.
Well, I was about to ask you how long have you been working here at the college, but thank you for letting me know that soon.
Sure.
And if that's so, what do you enjoy most about teaching in Delta College?
I think a couple of things. First of all, I genuinely enjoy the 2-year school environment, right? Because I'm a teacher, I want to be at a place where my job really genuinely is to teach. 4-year schools are great, they have their place, but I wouldn't want to be in a place where publishing is the most important thing, research is the most important thing, and teaching is only kind of a side element. Teaching is the most important thing to me, so I want to be at a place where that's the goal, and at Delta especially, that is the goal. I do publish, I do research, and that's great, that's all fine, but my job more than anything else is to be an effective instructor of my students, and because that's what I enjoy doing, I like being in a place that values that. And the other thing is that Delta gives us a lot of latitude. As long as our students are leaving the classroom with the skills and the principles and the knowledge that they need to succeed going forward, how we do it is entirely up to us. And that kind of freedom in terms of what texts I choose or how I approach it or individual lessons for the day, entirely up to me, and there's no big brother standing over my shoulder, shaking his finger saying you have to do X, Y, and Z. No, as long as my students are learning what they need to learn, I can do whatever I want, and that kind of freedom is exhilarating. I really enjoy it.
If that's so, have you had any memorable experience or success story with students at the college that you want to share with us?
On both, kind of a academic and professional, but also personal level. I love it when my students go on to Michigan, to State, to other big colleges, and they win scholarships and they graduate with honors. And because I've been teaching at Delta for 10 years, and so 18-year-old freshmen that I taught my first semester here now, almost 30, and have jobs and have families, and yeah, thanks to the magic of social media, and I never friend students while they're my students, but afterwards, once they graduate, I'll follow them on social media, and it's a delight to watch someone go to a highly specialized art school after Delta and achieve wonders and win awards, and then go on to be a professional graphic designer who is married and very happy and has this great career, or to have film students who work in newsrooms, who have moved to Hollywood, who have moved to New York and are working on productions on a regular basis. But also, on a personal level, anyone who has taken my classes knows that I always arrange my students into alphabetical order by first name. It's a trick I use to memorize their name so that I can always call on them by their name instead of being you there. I can say David, right? So I taught 2 comp classes back to back, a 111 and a 112, and everyone was arranged. And so a girl named Valerie and a guy named Zach were sat next to each other, never met each other, didn't know each other from Adam. They took my 2 classes together, and now they're happily married. So Mark Brown's classes make families. That's what I'm saying.
That's awesome.
They invited me to their wedding, which I thought was very sweet.
So you kind of accumulated love to him. So what's your professional background in the film industry?
Well, like I mentioned, education-wise, I have a PhD in film studies. I wrote my dissertation on spiritual filmmaking and the films of Richard Dutcher, who's an independent filmmaker out of Utah. But my personal history, literally one of my very earliest memories was seeing Star Wars in the theater. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and it was in Rupert, Idaho, in this tiny single-screen theater in this little windswept Idaho town. And my parents took me, and my mom, was like whispering to me what the yellow words on the crawl were saying. Episode 4, A New Hope. She read that to me because I was 4 and couldn't read. And it was electrifying. It was this amazing. I didn't know what was going on. Lasers, a man in a black samurai helmet, lightsabers. I had no idea what was going on, but I loved every second of it. And from that point forward, going to the movies was always a treat. Going to the movies was something special. My dad worked a lot, and so when he would come home and say, "Hey, do you want to go to a movie?" That meant time with Dad. It meant, he was in a good mood. It meant it sort of symbolized, luxury and indulgence and family time. And so, I grew up going to movies with my dad. And my mom, who I loved and had this great relationship with, didn't like the movies. She didn't like it. She didn't enjoy it, right? Which I never understood in the slightest, but my dad did. So from an early age, he would be taking us to movies that he wanted to see, and he just needed someone to go with him. I don't know, I think I was maybe 9 or 10, and Rambo First Blood Part 2 came out. I was 10 years old. My dad takes me and my brother to the theater to see it with the blood and the explosions and the shooting and the stabbing, and completely age inappropriate, but a blast, right? So a lot of really happy memories associated with going to movies with my family. And then when I started dating, that was kind of like how I knew a girl and I were kind of on the same wavelength, as if we could at least talk about movies. Not if we liked the same movies necessarily, but if we could have an interesting talk about them afterwards. And so they have been central to my life, literally, with no exaggeration, for as long as I can remember. And so when it came time for me to pursue a PhD, I spoke to one of my mentors from grad school, and I said, I want to get a PhD. What advice do you have? And she said, choose something that feeds you. It's gonna take a long time. It's gonna be harder than you think. It's gonna take longer than you think. You need to choose something that kind of nourishes you as you're studying it. So don't choose something just because it's trendy or just because you think it'll get you a job. Choose something that you love and are genuinely interested in, so that when you hit that point where you're tired and it's been a million years and you're sick of it, you can keep going because you love it. And that's why I chose film studies, because I'm like, I won't ever get sick of this, and I haven't. So,
how do you support students and encourage them to succeed in your classes?
I try to teach well. I try to give them, knowledge, skills, and abilities that are going to be useful going forward. I always try to think of, what's next for them. If I'm teaching an English 111 class, I think about what do they need to know to be prepared for and do well in 112. When it's an intro to film class, what do I need to pass on to these students that's going to help them to be cinematically literate, so that they can have a vocabulary when they're looking at and talking about movies with other people who also know about movies. But beyond that, beyond just the basic of, actually teaching, one thing I always try to do is I always try to share opportunities around campus. We have clubs, we have organizations, we have events on campus that are, fantastic opportunities for students if they take advantage of them. For instance, coming up soon, they're going to be showing the great documentary Bad Axe, which was made by David Sieve. It was short-lived, it was on many critics' best of lists at the end of last year. It was shortlisted for the Oscars for Best Documentary. It's this fantastic documentary, and it was made by a guy who's from Bad Axe, Michigan, which is like an hour away from here. And it's about that town, it's about quarantine in that city and what it was like for this family and what they had to go through. And it's fantastic. And David Sieve, who is this award-winning filmmaker, he'll be here to talk about it. And so I am begging my students, hounding them to show up, right? Because how often do you get to see a film that's that accomplished and that well-received and well done, that has a local, regional connection, and actually meet and speak with and ask questions of the filmmaker themselves? That's huge. And, especially post-quarantine, I think it happens at two-year schools just in general, right? Because, we don't have dorms. People don't live here. People, leave their job, they come in on two wheels, they take their class, and they, get out as fast as they can because they got to go pick up their kid, they got to go work that second shift, they've got to, they've got lives. And so hanging out and going to things, right? Participating in stuff, joining a club, going to a free movie screening, it's not on a lot of people's radar because they feel they're too busy. The disadvantage though is that they miss out on these amazing opportunities and things that become, the college experience. And so I'm hounding my students to show up and to take advantage of this and to not just be like, I have to work later, I don't want to. I think people find that if they just step out a little bit and try, go to that first club meeting, go to that free movie showing, stop at the tables in the hall and ask questions, you'll have a much better experience and you're going to be more prepared. You're going to build more of a network. You're going to make more connections, you're going to learn more, you're going to know more, you're going to be more prepared for what comes next. You're going to be more literate, you know what I mean? And so that's one thing I really try to encourage my students to do, is just to get involved, because that really is the thing that sets one student apart from another. Two students graduate from Delta, they're in the same program, they have the same GPA, they took the same classes, same grades, everything. But this person belonged to a club, this person joined the honors program, this person volunteered, this person, And so looking at them on paper, when it comes to who's going to get the slot in that program, who's going to win that scholarship, who's going to get that job, it's going to be that person who got involved, who took advantage of these additional opportunities. So I'm always kind of prodding my students to get more involved and to sort of leave the whole, post-COVID high school, laying around your bedroom doing nothing vibe behind, right?
It's great. And are there any unique perspectives or approaches that do you bring into teaching courses?
I teach an honors composition class where instead of standard texts, just like a textbook with essays to read, we use zines, which are small self-published pamphlets and booklets made with a Sharpie marker, a photocopy machine, and a stapler. It's all about self-publication. It's all about not waiting for an editor or a publisher to be able to say, yes, that's good enough to be published. That's good enough for public consumption. It's very democratic. Anyone who wants a voice can have a voice. And it's also an embrace of the tactile, right? Things that you can touch. Because anyone can, go on their phone and tweet or post, and it can go out to millions of people instantly, right? But can you touch that? Can you pick it up? Can you hold it in your hands? Can you hand it to a friend? You can't really, right? Zines are tactile, zines are physical. You make them with your own two hands, which requires a different kind of thinking, a different kind of intellectual engagement. And so my students still write essays, but they write essays that are meant to be physical and handheld and handmade and distributed to friends and family. And so it's like I was saying earlier, the basic principles of how to write well, how to write clearly and interestingly, that stays the same. And they leave my classroom with those principles. They just do it in a different way, through kind of a different medium than what they're used to. It perks up their interest because it's not just the same old that they've been doing. And they have these physical things at the end of class that they can show, right? Like, how often do you want to like, hey, everybody, here's my essay. But I have students who are really proud of the work that they've done with their zines because they're visually engaging, they're physically interesting, and they're good writing as well. So that's one thing I do. And so generally speaking, once my students kind of key into that like the more you talk, the better time we have, and the more you learn, class, especially my film classes, becomes so fun because people start making connections. We talk about an idea, and suddenly they're like, oh, is this like that in that film we just watched? And you see them, literally watch them gaining knowledge in that moment and gaining understanding that they didn't have before. And so there's nothing revolutionary about having in-class discussion. But I do think that my enjoyment of it and my enthusiasm for it generally makes it a pretty successful tool in my class.
Any effective ways to gain practical experience and exposure while studying in the department?
Well, when it comes to film, we actually have, Delta's kind of remarkable. There are very few community colleges in the nation that have film programs, right? Much less film programs that have, a fully equipped studio with, digital cameras and the latest cutting edge editing suites. And we've got a crane, we've got stuff, And so the first thing that a student can do is just really take advantage of everything that Delta's EMB program has to offer. Because, just by taking the classes and doing them well and doing them to the best of your ability, you're going to come out with an education and experience that most people, at a 2-year school can't even get, right? I co-taught a cinematography class years ago, and it was a blast. It was so much fun. But the capstone projects is that each student has to make their own 10-minute short film. And just the work and the effort and the discipline and the planning that goes into creating just 10 minutes of functional narrative film, if you can pull that off, you can pull off almost anything, right? Like it's a feat. It's a real thing. Beyond the classroom, beyond what Delta provides. And I should mention, right, like our faculty, Jeff Vandy Zandy has made over 100 short films and has entered and been, he's been accepted into dozens and dozens of film festivals. He's won awards. He's a big deal, right? And he can make a film in a weekend. He has the knowledge and the ability to write a script, gather the resources, gather actors, and just make that happen. So just that, if a student's like, how can I get exposure? How can I get experience? I'm like, go talk to Jeff Vandy Zandy, for one thing. But even if that's not necessarily a thing, we have a functioning radio station here that's broadcasting 24 hours a day. We have Kim Wells, who's an award-winning producer of documentaries and news, and she has these amazing connections and this amazing professional lived experience that she is more than happy to share with students. She has a lot of students who have gone on to work professionally in the field right now, thanks not only to her just being a teacher, but also being a reference and a network member. Photojournalism, we have the Collegiate, which has won national awards. It's run by Crystal McMorris, who's a fantastic journalist in and of herself. So meeting and knowing these faculty who have these connections, who have this experience, that's huge. But beyond that, if you want to go beyond Delta, Delta is fascinatingly positioned in that the reason why we're called Delta is because we're right in the middle of the triangle of Midland, Saginaw, and Bay City. Bay City has a film festival. Saginaw has a film festival. There's a film festival down in Frankenmuth. Bay City's film festival, the Hell's Half Mile Music and Film Festival, is one of the best in the nation. And they often bring in, award-winning filmmakers, actors, producers, and students can volunteer, right? You can volunteer to help out with the festival. You can take tickets, you can do concessions, you can sell merch, and you get free tickets to go to shows. But you've got filmmakers and actors and producers just hanging out in Bay City for the weekend, right? And they are friendly and they want to talk and they want to meet people, and students who are willing to, again, take that initiative and get involved and show up. And not only volunteer and get involved that way, but also just go up to a filmmaker and say, hey, I really enjoyed what you just did. That shot in the last third of the film that's up on the cliff looking down at the train tracks, how did you do that? Right? That kind of stuff is gold. Detroit, which is just an hour and a half to the south, they used to have amazing filmmaking opportunities there because they had a tax break. The Transformers films were filmed there. Real Steel was filmed there. Parts of Batman vs. Superman were filmed there. For a minute, we had big multi-million-dollar mainstream Hollywood films being made in Detroit on the regular because it's got amazing production value. And Detroit was just like, yeah, man, come make your movie. In Hollywood, you have to pay $500 for a permit just to set your camera down. But in Detroit, they're like, I interviewed an independent filmmaker in Detroit once who was making a 10-part science fiction TV show, totally independently. He was trying to sell it to the Sci-Fi Network and that sort of thing. And they were filming on the People Mover, I think, which is this funny little elevated train that circles downtown Detroit that you can ride for 50 cents. And no permits, no permission, no nothing. They were just filming on the fly, guerrilla style. And a cop got on the train. And they're like, oh boy, he's here to shut us down. He's here to fine us. He's here to give us a ticket. The cop kind of watched for a minute and asked the producer, what are you doing? And he explained. He's like, can I be in it? And so that tax break got taken away. And so Detroit is not as much of a filmmaking hub as it had the potential to be. But again, for young filmmakers, who want exposure, who want experience, there are people making movies in Detroit. There are people making movies in Flint and Saginaw. Find out who they are, right? Everybody's looking for a volunteer. And if you're a knowledgeable volunteer, if you're someone who has an education, you can say, yeah, I got my degree in digital film from Delta College. I know how to edit. I know how to run a camera. I know how to, you name it. I can hold a boom, whatever you want. And I'm willing to work for free, or I'm willing to work for food, or I'm willing to work for very little. Anyone who's willing to hustle can get invaluable experience and items on your resume, exposure, connections. The world belongs to people who are willing to hustle, and if you're willing to put yourself out there, and Delta prepares you so that when you do get out there and hustle, you've got the skills and the knowledge that you need. So that's what I recommend. Just, there are people out there making films not that far away. Go find them and offer to help. That's what I'd say.
And so, do you have any noble accomplishment or success story you or the department has achieved that you want to share with us?
Well, as far as the EMB program and filmmaking at Delta, we are not nearly as appreciated as we should be, frankly. And I say we, I don't make, I guess that's not true, I do make something, but I'm not making films, I'm not making a newspaper, I'm not making productions. But the people at Delta who are doing great work and getting recognized by really big, important people. And I wish our community sort of knew that. I wish they sort of appreciated that more and recognized it more. For myself, my big accomplishment, as far as this particular thing goes, as you mentioned in my introduction, I've been the voice and host of what's now called Movie House for 10 years, right? It's a 5-minute movie review that comes on Delta's radio station 90.1 every Friday, 2 times in the morning, 7:45 and 9:45 a.m. It started, I've been doing it for, it'll be 10 years this fall. So I started in September of 2014. For 5 years before that, it was done by a fellow English department member named Ryan Wilson. He started, it used to be called Take 5 on Film. It was 5 minutes long, and he would do these 5-minute movie reviews. I came to Delta in 2013. I met Ryan, we were buddies, he was my mentor. And at the end of that year, he decided he was leaving, he was going to another school. And my 2 reactions were, oh, Ryan, I'm sad, man. We're buddies, we're pals. I've enjoyed having you as a mentor. I'm sorry that you're leaving. My second reaction was, can I have your show? I didn't wait for the body to get cold, man. I moved in there and asked him if I could have the show. And so he consulted with the guys at the radio station, and they said it was okay. They gave me a tryout, and it worked out okay. And so, yeah, since September 2014, I've averaged about 40 shows a year. There was quarantine where campus was shut down, no one was coming to campus. So there was about a year and a half where I didn't do anything. But later today, actually, I'm taping my 246th show. And I'll probably reach 250 by the end of March. And so, yeah, I've produced 250 different shows. Some of them movie reviews, some of them essays about, movies in general, film going, film theaters, drive-ins, the joy of the video store. Some of them interviews with local filmmakers or film festival organizers, different events centered around film. But yeah, for the last 10 years, I have worked hard to promote both films as an art form, but also the ways in which Delta and this region engage with film and celebrate film. And it's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun. 10 years is a long time to do anything, right? And there are times when it feels like I'm a plow horse just kind of going up one row and then back down the other. But yeah, I would say keeping after one thing and doing it consistently for 10 years straight, that's an accomplishment. I'll take that.
And with that being said, do you face any major challenges while after school in teaching courses in the past or recent years?
I mean, teaching's always challenging because it always changes, right? And that's both the joy and sort of the difficulty of it is that every 16 weeks it's over, right? And so, you can have the best class, everybody's in sync, everybody gets it, you're teaching at your peak, you just feel like, this is as good as it gets. And then at the end of 4 months, it's over. And you start over with an entirely different group, an entirely different time of year, different classroom, different whatever, and it's never the same. It's never the same. And so it's always a challenge to figure out, how can I teach this group of people? How can I effectively communicate with this particular combination? So there is just sort of that inherent, it's a challenge, but it's also the reward, right? Because I would not like a job that was the same, right? The fact that it is different every 4 months is part of what saves it for me, because I gotta try again, I gotta start again, I gotta tweak this, I gotta adjust that. It keeps me interested, it keeps me engaged. But beyond just the basic challenges of teaching in general, obviously, COVID and quarantine, all of the upheaval, all of the fear and the unknown and the sadness of loss and death, and just the effect that it had on students. because the students who are in college now are students who, you know, were maybe just starting high school right when COVID hit. And so there was this giant chunk of their education where all of their social activities were taken away, their athletic activities were taken away. They were left, you know, sitting in their bedroom or sitting in their living room or at their kitchen table, staring at a screen for hours at a time, worried that the world was burning down outside, you know, their window. And that had an effect on them educationally. It had an effect on them socially, mentally, emotionally. Obviously, it was devastating for all of us. It was horrible. And it's going to be a long time before we have a crop of students who aren't, in some way, COVID students, right? So, trying to get students to sort of dislodge from being reticent, being disengaged, being quiet, keeping to themselves, you know, helping them to see the joy of getting involved, speaking up, of tangling up with people intellectually, interpersonally, whatever, just, you know, not being socially distanced, right? Literally, physically, in all these ways, but like being able to get close with the subject, being able to get close with classmates and friends, being able to get close with a campus community. That's what I'm always sort of trying to push my students towards, because I feel like that's where the real rewards, intellectually, socially, interpersonally, all come, is when you get close, not when you know, keep your distance. So now that it's safe to do that, that's what I'm constantly trying to get students to do. That's the challenge.
Thank you to me.
A little bit.
That's a great thing to know. Yeah. And what are your future goals and aspirations in the department?
You know, number one, I want to get better at teaching. You know, I've been teaching for over 20 years, one place or another. I mean, if you count teaching as a grad student, I've been teaching for 24 years, and I still don't have it yet. You know, sometimes I do. Some classes are great. I'm like, yeah, and then the next semester comes along, and God, I suck at this. So. Just fine tuning my teaching, making sure that every class is useful, making sure that every class, every student leaves every class with something purposeful and meaningful and beneficial and helpful. Because I mean, even after almost 25 years now, I still just have these days where the teaching's just mushy, right? Like that did not do what I wanted it to do. But beyond that, you know, like I say, I've reached 10 years of doing the show. I've been teaching for 10 years. I'm in the process of, you know, applying for. I'm in the final throes of applying for my final promotion, which would make me a full professor here at Delta College. And I'm finishing up my tenure as honors director, and so I'm at this place where it's going to be like, okay, you know. After next year, you know, when I am hopefully a full professor, when I am done directing the honors program, you know, that really is, and I go back to just kind of a regular teaching schedule, and you know, whatever. It's like, yeah, what next? What do I do now? What do I do now? Because, you know, you don't want to rest on your laurels. You don't want to get lazy. You don't want to get creaky and dusty and rusty. But whatever I do, I don't have specific goals like, oh, I want to serve on this committee or I want to start this project, so much as I know that whatever I do, I want it to be things that are meaningful, things that actually contribute. I'm not interested in doing committee work for the sake of committee work. I'm not interested in, you know, hopping on a project just to, oh, sure, you know, I got nothing better to do. I only want to do things that are meaningful. I only want to do things that contribute and that are special, that I can bring something to. I only want to do projects where I can actually add something. I'm not just another body at the table. You know, the older you get, the less you want to waste your time, the less you want to jump through hoops. And so that's my big picture goal going forward, is that whatever I do next, good stuff only, meaningful stuff only, and no hoop jumping where possible, where it can be avoided.
That's good to know. And with that, so the last question is on is, what advice do you have for students to take the most of their time at Delta College?
Oh man, it's the same song I've been singing. Get involved, speak up, right? If you're in a classroom, raise your hand. Have something to say, ask a question, make a comment, just get involved. The more, it's a total cliche, the more you give, the more you get. So the more you engage, the more attention, more effort you give in the classroom, the more knowledge, better relationships, the more skills that you're going to get coming out of it. But in the, outside of the classroom, yeah, go join a club. Go walk up to someone who has a cool t-shirt on and say hi and ask if you can sit and have lunch with them. Start a hacky sack game out in the quad. Be involved, hang around. Don't feel like, do your work, do it well, get it in on time, but don't feel like every minute of your day has to be scheduled and dictated and mandated and on a calendar. Give yourself idle time to hang out with friends and to talk about stupid stuff. Give yourself idle time to dream up projects and ideas and clubs and activities, and then do them, right? One of the fantastic things about Delta College is that you can be a monumental fish in a relatively small pond. A student comes up to a teacher and says, I'd like to start a club, I want to start a Lego building club. And chances are someone will be like, okay, I'll advise that, make it happen. And you can do it. You can say, I want to organize a trip to, Detroit. I want to take, fellow film fans, and I want us to go down to Detroit for a film festival. I want to go see a movie at the DIA's theater. Chances are someone will find a way to help you do that. Everyone at Delta is just waiting around to help students do what they want to do, become what they want to become. And to try what they want to try, because maybe you don't necessarily know what you want to be or what you want to become, but maybe you just really know that you like geology. You're like, oh, there's a club for that. There are teachers for that. There's a department for that. Maybe you're just really into accounting, And so, great, go talk to the accounting teachers and say, what if we, is there any way that we could maybe have like a series of speakers come in, once a month, and we could buy them lunch and they could tell us about being an accountant. Anyone at I know nothing about accounting, and I'd help that kid, right? So that's the thing. Like, if Delta students are watching this, figure out what sounds interesting to you. Figure out what would kind of make your brain fizz a little bit. Figure out what kinds of things you want to know about. Someone at Delta knows about it and can help you find out about it, can help you learn more, gain more skills, gain more understanding, and make connections. And so don't be afraid to ask. That is what I would say.
And I think the airing time for this episode have been extended, so that's what I want to say is that I would like to thank you, Professor Brown.
Thank you so much, Professor, and for taking time to be here on this show. And I would say, I very appreciate your valuable thoughts about everything you share with us, and it kind of enhances for our audience, like get people understand what you want to say and your perspective. And for students who enroll your course, when they watch this, maybe they're gonna gain some advantage on your expertise and assistance for that. So thank you so much for being here, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking.
Good. And thank you so much for everyone for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is David, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Stay tuned.